This is Joycey.
And Blake. And welcome to Savagely Scaled. Like Joycey said,
yeah.
This is a mini episode.
I know, I just go straight to it. I just forget about the intro every time.
Like, that's our whole phrase.
I know, I'm telling you. Next time I'm just going to do a button press and go. Yeah. Anyways, so I'm excited for this one because we're going to be talking in this mini episode about the Danielle Brandon, the badass.
Yeah, and that was who you picked.
I know.
Yeah,
right?
and I was excited. Yeah. I remember when I saw like the teaser and I sent it to you.
Yeah, you sent it to me.
And you're like, oh, okay. And I was like, I think it's a movie. Like, they're coming out with something. And I think you thought it was for something else.
Yeah.
Like just a regular clip of
like,
something.
Okay, good for her.
Yeah. And I was like, no, like, I think it's talking about her life.
Yeah. When you were like, oh, it's going to be a documentary, I was like, what?
Yeah, I got like super excited because I like seeing her throughout, you know, her journey of what I have seen. I'm like, okay, there's a reason why this person has this personality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's either a personality where she could care less about everybody, or she has seen some shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really excited. I was actually in California, so I had to wait because I saw on our group messenger with everybody. Yeah. You're like, you guys have to watch.
Oh, I watched it the moment it came out.
I know, and I was like, I'm in California. My mom would totally be like, why are you watching something about CrossFit?
Yep. That's what I get from everybody who doesn't do CrossFit. Why are we talking about CrossFit? Why are you watching a CrossFit video? How did I get CrossFit? I'm like, leave me alone.
I watch murder mystery
leave
too.
CrossFit alone.
Yeah.
But no, I'm with you. I think that was my mentality too. I'm like, well, this chick has obviously gone through something to be this thug and this badass, and she came out of nowhere too, so it's kind of like, whoa, you know, like, what's her story? And I feel like she's one of the athletes that doesn't really do a lot of interviews or isn't really out there in the spotlight, or isn't big on like talking about her life. So I already knew that this was going to be very intriguing. I just didn't realize how much of the stuff she went through. I was like, oh man, like, how
to go through so much and yet be so able to be great at basically everything that was thrown at her.
Mm-hmm.
Like seeing that she could do any type of sport basically, and, you know, hit high academics.
That's true. Yeah.
You know, like the beginning, like seeing how her mom had her and her brother very close. And kind of like with that, like when her mom was talking about the dynamics of the kids and how how Danielle would hide things from her brother. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I have like the reverse. Like my youngest daughter hides everything from her brother if she, you know, if he's getting too much, or we've had to buy them both the same because she wants what brother wants or what brother has. So seeing that dynamic and seeing that, like when they were younger, how much they really cared for one another and how she loved. And I was like, that's like beats to my mom heart.
Yeah.
You know, and then seeing when they fast forward a little bit, because they kept going back and forth on the timeline, which I did appreciate.
Yeah, it was helpful in kind of painting a picture of what was going on at that time. And yeah, I think that, like you said, that was the biggest thing of how she just had to grow up very young and had to be there for her brother, and kind of like, I guess, the nice maternal ways you point out, but also in ways that, like, she kind of alludes through her whole documentary, you know, that she kind of had to step in and be her own mom through everything and the trauma and the abuse and everything that happened with her mom, and kind of the whole backstory there. And I think something that I commend so much, not only from her, but from people who experience trauma, is this whole concept of, I am not going to be like that person that caused the trauma, because it's so easy to fall into that net of saying, oh, well, I went through all of this, so I could do drugs, I could drink, I could go through more trauma, and it's excused because I've been through all this.
Yeah, like, have you met people who are like, well, I don't want to do what my parents did.
Yeah.
But they end up falling right in line with what their parents are doing. And I remember my mom raised me because my mom had, you know, both of her parents, when she was like the age of 3, told her like, we don't want you, like we don't want kids. They were divorced. They would fight over money and things like that. And she was very well known as a young age that she wasn't wanted. So what she grew up is, I am not going to be like my parents, you know? And she was like, I want you to be better than me. You know, and I feel like she was a fantastic mom. She was a single mom raising me. You can go back into that. Well, I don't want to be like my parents, and I don't want to say poor me, because my mom has lived a similar life to Danielle Brandon's life. I haven't. So I can't also sit here and be like, oh, the poor me factor. Right. But when we go into that, like, example for me, my whole family's very obese. I don't want to be. So what do I change, and what do I change in me? Or my kids' mindset is doing better in that. My mom did the best she can because she was a single mom working like 2 or 3 jobs. Yeah. So like, you know, living in a garage and, knowing that she did all she could because she didn't want to be like her parents, you know, makes me, want to be a better mom and be like, my mom did the best that we could. We lived on Hamburger Helper. We lived on all kinds of things that are not good for us. So let me do that better for my kids. Right. And she raised me to do that and not go back on, well, that's cheaper. My kids don't need to be active. My kids don't need to be, you know, where there's a will, there's a way, as she has always done. And that's what I want. So like Danielle at a very young age, like you said, had to be her mom. So I know that affected her and her brother's relationship when she got older, because when you grow up into that, don't you get that mindset of, I have to look out for myself because nobody else will. Right. You know? So this whole show just like pulled at my heartstrings. It did. And very appreciative of her sharing.
It must have been super. You could even tell through the documentary that she felt like uncomfortable and kind of talking about. She's like, I've never really talked about this to anybody aside from her manager, I think she said.
Did she look beautiful?
I mean, she did.
Oh my God, she looked so absolutely like she does. Like most of these women do, no matter their size. But I'm just saying, like her aura and what she was wearing, and I was like, oh my God, she looks absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
No, yeah, I loved every like outfit she was wearing for the whole thing. I was like, girls got style, gotta love it. And the way she just drives up in that cool car at the beginning and the end, and I'm just like, she knows, she acknowledges like, hey, I had a rough past, and that's a part of me, but that has shaped the hardcore nature that I have now and when attacking this sport. Yeah. And like I said, I feel like it's just commendable to see that, like, in even like you said, it relates to people because they see that in their own life, or they've seen their parents have struggled, or they themselves, or XYZ, you know. And I'm glad that she made the decision to share that story, because truthfully, like, I had no idea anything about that from her. No. Much less, like, I'm sure a lot of people in the CrossFit community were shocked, because that's not a background that a lot of people would share.
Yeah. Like, they even did, you know, looking at like when she was starting to train with Carrie and Bethany and how they were going up. But I know you touched on the manager, and that was who she, when he first saw her and was like, who is that? Like, she just killed that workout and nobody knows her. Right. And like, who is that? And I think like the biggest part with people who have gone through trauma and the relationships they build, and I know with my mom, like, trusting people is hard. You know, I always have that issue too with, when is the bottom going to fall out? When are you planning on not having my back? When are you planning on using me? Because I saw it growing up with people with my mom, you know? So like having that, like you keep very little, you know, you keep everything to yourself, give very little, and you keep very little around. So you're not as heartbroken when they decide to leave. So to see their relationship and how they blossomed, and just that she has those people in her corner. And I know people come and go, but to have like somebody who has your back in something and can give you the outside perspective of like, hey, she probably not done that. Great for doing that.
Yes.
Let's do this. Like having that and getting her foot in the door, I think is amazing.
Yeah, I thought it was cool how she tested the waters with that all the time. Like when she was speaking about like, oh, when the whole COVID thing happened and they had me working out like separately from the girls and like.
I was like, no wonder she flipped everybody off. I would have been so pissed off. I would have been mad too.
Think of how that affects your, like how I was telling you earlier, like how that affects your performance, like just doing it by yourself versus doing it with like other people who could push you. Like how is that not going to impact you or make you feel even more of an outsider? Like, and then over time and time again, and it's like she had to be tested how many times, she keeps getting cleared. And when she was talking about the running event, and she's like, and it's like that broke my heart.
Like, what if nobody picks me?
Yeah, and they're like, they wanted her to run with a mask on.
Yeah. And
they had asked that of her, and she's like, I'm not going to do that.
And then who
volunteered?
Who was the first volunteer? Laura Horvath. Like, it's...
That's why I love Laura, because she's like, I want to run with the best. And she's the best, so it's like, that's how you play it.
Oh, she might have COVID, she can't run.
Maybe she was thinking that. Part of me
I'll take my
the
chances.
nice one, but
no, I think she is very, very nice and wants to have somebody push her.
Yeah, that's messed up.
To look at all the things that they made her do, and she was still competing, she was still performing. And then when she talked about that handstand one and how her hands were slippery because they kept spraying the shit off, and I'm like, nobody else is touching it. You're making her practice and you're spraying it off. Like, what kind of mental game are you playing now with her? Because that's what I would be. I'd be like, what do you want me to stop? Do you want me to forfeit?
At this point, I would have just not wanted to do it. Like, just tell me not to do it then.
This sucks. And I'd be like, and all these people don't know what's going on. Like, you just told them that the people I've been with have COVID. So now they just think that I have it. COVID. You're not telling them how many times I'm testing. You're not telling them how many times I have to do this. You're not telling them anything. And yet I have to prepare myself.
Girl.
Right?
That's why I understand so much more why she was so mad in those games.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I was like, girl.
I would have just had some more choice words.
Yeah. And then the pressure of her having to represent her team because the other two were out. And I was like,
and it was sad because that was Carrie's retirement year. Yeah. She was going to retire after that. Bethany was doing amazing.
I think they said that was her best year.
Yeah. You know, because they did the semifinals together. And when I first watched the semifinals, that's when I started, like, you know, watching Bethany. And you said that you were watching Danielle Brandon, and I knew of Carrie Pierce. So that was when I was like, oh, they have these three amazing athletes from your camp, you know. And then when you fast forward that they, you know, they got sick, she had to do all that. And then going back to that camp, and now Carrie's retired. Bethany moved back home. Now you're that high person, and things aren't just jiving. They're not jiving as much. You're growing a different way. The underdogs were growing a different way.
It was crazy.
It was. I knew something had happened. Because I'm like, oh, why would you not be with that same group? Like, you were growing, and
that's what I was curious about too. And I was like,
and I was like, I knew there was something. Now I was not there, so I can't judge anything, but
but we like the taste. So.
But I feel like whenever something happens, communication's always the error, you know, and it's always sometimes, well, I shouldn't say always and sometimes in the same sentence. Sometimes it's also the communication of blaming one another and not looking at ourselves. Or, you know, if you think of somebody as your family, not doing a person-to-person conversation and doing an email, and you've been doing things for years, that
was quite scandalous.
You know, that kind of, and even my friends I have now, that I hold that same standard. You better be telling me to my face, because I will. I will try as long as I can, and after I've had the same conversation with you, I will stop. So,
no, I feel that, you know.
But, you know, then, so she's already had that trust issue, because then we look at going back to the
all
past.
That history.
Yeah, where now her mom got into drugs.
now it's happening again at the games, and now it's kind of like, it's...
Yeah, and because she not only has that neglect from her matriarch, now with her aunt and uncle, who are basically mentally abusing, mentally and emotionally, and would say that, and then you go into this happening, and you're like, your
safe space, quote unquote, right?
You told me you were my family. Again, we weren't there to know whose fault, whose things like that. But it's kind of sometimes you have to tread lightly with people who've gone through that, and you can't just say you're my family and not be there in that.
Yeah.
Yep, and not be there for my lows, but be there for my highs. I'm gonna always be up and down because that's how my beginnings were.
Things happen,
Yeah.
So I feel her on that for sure, on the idea of like, I'm human, I make mistakes, and I needed you in that moment and you weren't there. And I could see how that can be very crushing for a person, especially for her. It seemed like CrossFit was her outlet, and it was like the space where she can be her strongest, best version of herself. And then she jumps into the games and everyone's setting limitations on her and telling her about all this. Like, of course somebody would feel that way after all that. It's like, wow, this world that I thought was mine, it's now like setting more limits on me, and it's kind of like, like that's crushing. Like, it kind of breaks my heart. And again, like, it's just amazing to see her, despite all of that, still be like, you know what, like, flipping the bird at everybody and being like, I'm still gonna go out there and freaking do it. Screw all of y'all.
Did y'all see that?
Screw these limits. Like, and then I remember the manager just being like, oh man, you probably should have done that, but you know what, you're Danielle Brandon, like, do you. And
because she was always known as like a little bit of the edgy side, which, like, even when they go into it, like, edgy is like, with some people it could be like a hairstyle or something, but she actually owns that word to where she has an edge to her.
They're like, you're either edgy or you're not. You can't buy into being edgy. And I was like, yes, that's exactly it.
And that's her. But after that, like, looking at another athlete that I didn't know too much about, Dallin Pepper, who actually was like, yeah, come train with me.
I
like,
loved
no
that.
problem. I was like, I didn't know they trained together.
Yeah.
Like, again,
she was in a tough spot, and he's like, I got you. And then that was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know everything, but to see that, it was just, again,
community.
Community. I just, like, touched my little heartstrings about, like, like, it's nice that she had that. Like,
if you want to drop in any gym, you could drop it in our gym, Danny.
Yeah,
anytime. I don't know if we'll give you much of a challenge, but I will try.
Or you come just coach class.
Right? I know I did want her opening outfit when I saw it. Like, that bra. I was like,
gosh.
Girl.
I just felt like she looked absolutely amazing. And
then I'm also not used to seeing CrossFitters in clothes outside of workout clothes.
I feel like it's like us, like when people see everybody that they see at the gym in regular clothes.
Yeah.
And I was like, you look really cute. And they're like, oh, because I'm in regular clothes. I'm like, girl, I also complimented your leggings. But yeah, like when you're in regular clothes, they just hit differently.
Yeah. And it speaks to your personality and your style. Like, I love how Danny's like half tomboyish, but also half like feminine.
Yeah.
Like, she's like, I'm gonna wear the jeans, but have the big gold chain. And then I have the sports bra. And I'm like, yes. And then she had like boots on or something. I don't know. But I was like, yep, that's dope. That's dope.
I just felt like this was a better way of people to understand her, and I know, like, Katrin and Annie have the podcast, so you can understand them.
And then Tia had her own documentary too, right?
Yeah. And then Matt has done stuff. Like, I feel like some of these athletes, we just prejudge in certain things, or we do that, like, what's the Australian guy? Gerard. Ricky Gerard.
That's right.
I remember when he got popped for using. And then he was on a ban for so many years, and he came back, and I was like, excuse me, like,
I did too. I was I wouldn't have taken him back. That's what I was
like,
saying.
I don't hope you win. And they're like, why? And I was like, because, like, why would you do that? You knew, like, there
Your
were
rep
people
is
who
ruined.
deserved, and now
Like-
they didn't even get to go through that ceremony that you got to go through.
Mm-hmm.
They just get a call saying, oh, now you're this person. Like, you
He
ruined
stole that
it.
from somebody.
Yeah. And they're like, but can't you say that he did something and he's learned from it?
Well, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because I'm not his mother. I'm not anybody to him. He doesn't pay me to badmouth him. He's an athlete. We all make choices. We all make mistakes. We all do things, and I can't
Judge
sit
him
here.
for that,
I
but-
can't sit here and judge when I could just judge myself on things that I do every day. So
That's
yeah,
true.
Ricky, I'm very sorry for anything. Not that you know me, but I did when he got hurt on his bike, and I found out that he wasn't going to the games. I was like, oh, like that sucks.
Karma.
Like he did.
Like karma. Karma
I
hurts.
felt like he was bettering himself, but the moral of the story is, like, we put so much pressure on these athletes, just like we do with sports teams.
Yeah,
like we
that's
live
true.
with them, like we know
That's
them, like
true.
we pay their bills. We do not. So seeing them in these documentaries, and I feel like her documentary was very real.
Mm-hmm.
And it spoke to my heart because growing up in a low income single mom, like, it was just like, there's no excuses. And we've said that several times. There's really no excuses. You can either grow or stay stagnant.
Yeah,
and
my
it's
mama
your
taught me that
choice.
all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it is hard. It's hard for, a 7 or 8 year old to be like, oh, it's either grow or stagnant. It does help to have those people. And she did. She had friends. She had coaches. She had
Her
teachers.
manager.
Yes. She had gymnastic coaches.
That's right,
She
yeah.
had people who were willing in the community, who were willing to be like, this girl needs help.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for her brother because he didn't have as much.
Right.
But people were able to see her potential in things and be like, okay, we can help her in these areas. I feel like we need more of that for all, not just for kids that we think will have potential to get somewhere, because sometimes potential is something that they need to be nourished with over time, compared to, they just don't get it. On to
Right.
the next. But she was very fortunate to have those people in her life.
So true.
Yeah, so it was nice to
She
have
kicked
that.
butt. She did it.
She did, and I'm excited to see where she's at. I know we need to do an update of like our picks and where they placed in the open.
Oh yeah.
And the next where they'll be doing their semifinals.
Oh yeah. That I'm
Yeah.
excited for. But
So.
no, it was a great film to watch if you guys haven't seen it already.
Yeah,
It's like
you should
about
go
an
watch it
hour.
on YouTube.
Yeah, like an hour and 20
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's not a long one,
but yeah,
but
and it's an easy one to
Mhm.
watch. The way they put it together and everything, I felt like it was easy, and it wasn't like, okay, we're just gonna stop at every day.
Right.
It was like, okay, this happened, so let's fast forward to
The beginning of her
adult.
career. And,
yeah, okay, let's backtrack to this. Oh, let's fast forward and see how this could affect this.
Yes, that's how
And
They did a good way of
people
setting that up.
forget that this, when you're younger, can come to bite
Translates
you in the
to-
butt. Yep.
Yeah. It's definitely eye-opening, and it was definitely, like you said, a very introspective film in that it made you think a lot about, how we don't know a lot about what goes on behind the scenes sometimes at the gym, and how people are going through things, and how CrossFit can be more than just a workout class for so many people. It can be like a saving grace.
Yep.
And I feel like at the end of the day, that's what Danielle Brandon wanted us to know, is that, despite like having gone through all of the trauma in her past, like she was able to find a light in her CrossFit career. And I think that speaks to, like you said, not only to the CrossFit community and what it can do for you, but it also speaks to like the endurance and the resilience in people, especially her. Like I feel this only heightened my love for Danielle Brandon.
Yeah, it opened my eyes to it, because
Yeah.
I was like, oh, just an edgy person who does amazing on her hands.
Right? Yeah.
Which
Right?
listening to her mom say, oh, I just made her practice walking from here and there to her hands because she needed to do it for gymnastics.
Gymnastics.
And then opening doors with her feet. Like, that is hard.
Hey, Harper, get with it. No.
It's hard for me to just open a door with my hand.
Girl, see, that was the missing ingredient. This is what we should have been doing. Apparently. Opening doors with our feet.
But yeah, I feel like it's a must watch if you want to kind of dive deep into somebody's, background and not just judge them on the get-go.
Right, and then you'll have another athlete to talk about.
Yeah.
You'll have another one on your belt. Definitely
see
a
if
good
she
one.
resonates with you or not.
Agreed. But yeah, that was our spiel on Danielle Brandon's documentary.
Yeah. Go watch it.
Yeah. Let us know what you think.
Yes.
Leave the comments.
Yeah, and if there's any other documentaries out there for CrossFit that we can watch and talk about and review. But yeah, please let us know what you thought about this. And thank you to my co-host for letting us talk about this.
Shout out to Danielle Brandon for the amazing doc.
Yeah, right? Hopefully you're one of our followers.
Right.
Maybe not now, but in the future.
Right? Click it.
Click it or stick it.
Oh, man. Well,
all right.
Until we meet at the whiteboard again.
Bye.